Good afternoon or good evening to everyone. My name is Kate Coley, and I am the Talkback producer for this year's Cincinnati Fringe. So I will be taking you through all of the talkbacks throughout the Fringe, which you can find out more about in the Fringe guide, cincyfringe.com. Go ahead and download it. Today, this afternoon, evening, I am here with the Cold Hearts out of Brooklyn, and we're going to be talking about the Unrepentant Necrophile, which if you haven't gotten a chance to see it yet, make sure, again, you go to cincyfringe.com, get your ticket, and check it out. If you two want to go ahead and introduce yourselves, then we'll get started with some questions. And audience, feel free to add some questions in the comments below.
Hi, I'm Katie Hartman.
Hi, I'm Nick Ryan.
And we are the Cold Hearts. We made what you just witnessed.
Awesome. So what I would love to know first is a little bit more about your artistic collaboration. The Cold Hearts have created several shows, and I would love to know how you found each other, decided to start making work together, especially this American Gothic inspired horror, music, theater, super cool genre theater, and maybe a little bit about how that artistic partnership has evolved over time.
Yeah, we met at the University of Minnesota. We were Bachelor of Arts pursuers in the theater department, and that particular program has a strong legacy of creating theater creators. And so ensemble collaboration is largely what we met loving and learning about and doing. And I would say, we fell in love with each other after we had fallen in love with making experimental theater.
Yeah, we did some shows together in undergraduate, but really only a couple, like our junior and the year after, our junior and senior year, and then we kind of took a split artistically. Like, we got together romantically, but we took a split artistically. We kind of were like, okay, we don't want to be the theater couple that does all the same shows all the time. Let's pat. And we did that for about 8 years, and then we were like, hey, do you want to be the theater couple that does all each other's shows all the same time? We're like, yeah, let's try that for a while. So we started doing that about 8 years ago,
Great.
Mainly to tour theater, because we realized this kind of keeps this is a model that can work when you're a couple that is touring two-person shows.
Yeah, we live in New York, but Nick is from Minneapolis, and I lived there for 7 years, and then we've lived in New York for the last 10 years, and I would say it was born out of inspiration from our class. We had a really strong class at the university, and they're, of course, all theater makers in the Twin Cities. And out of that came a collaboration born out of Fringe festivals. We did the Minnesota Fringe together for the first time in 2004. And so out of that came a cohort. We did we grew up doing like improvised comedy together, and ended up Nick's theater company in Minneapolis.
For humorous theater that Cincinnati knows quite well. So the reason I went to Cincinnati in the first place.
Yeah,
For Humor.
Cool.
So For Humor started the Twin Cities Horror Festival because I mean, we're theater kids. We love Halloween, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, we had premiered Harold in Cincinnati in 2010, our For Humors ad. And I think at that point, Over the Rhine had not been built up yet. And so there were a lot of like just empty storefronts, and they did Harold in like the basement. I didn't see that production, but the guys told me about it, and they did it in like the basement, like this really creepy basement in an abandoned building on Vine Street in Cincinnati. And so we really loved that space where they premiered Harold, and we're like, we want to premiere it in Minneapolis somewhere. We want to do it at the Southern Theater. We can't afford the Southern Theater. What if we asked, 6 of our other collaborating groups if they wanted to create horror theater and create a festival so we can afford the venue that we want?
Very cool.
Because Harold was already done, I was the playwright for Harold. I was like, I'd like to make another show because all my work is done. So me and Katie had been talking about doing a one-woman show. And I was like, what if it were in the horror genre? And from there, we just started, we made 4 shows since then. So
very cool. Thank you so much for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, did I cut you off, Katie?
Oh, no worries. I was just going to say, my background has kind of always been music and theater. I grew up on musical theater. Whereas Nick, I would almost say your film writing theater. And so many of those interests they're loves of ours. We love talking about them. We love arguing about them. We love exploring genres. And so I think that's definitely what our work is born out of. Yeah.
Totally. Very cool. All right. We have, I'm going to save our audience questions because I think I can tie them in later. So what I would love to know is a little bit more about the Unrepentant Necrophile in specific. So it says, of course, in the plug that it's based on true events. So I'd love to know how you decided to pursue those events as the basis for this musical storytelling that you do and this very genre-specific storytelling. And then what your punk inspirations were moving forward in creating this play.
Cool. I think it's a multi-pronged question because it's sort of, I feel like there's so much backstory. So the first thing that we ever made and brought to Cincinnati was The Legend of White Woman Creek. In that we explore racism through folk music and a ghost story. And that was sort of our entry point into the American Gothic. We love history. We want to talk about, so often our fears stem from what we know, our collective history. And so, what better than our own American history? And so we started with Legend of White Woman Creek, and then that was it's a hard show to do. It's a sad show. And so we wanted to make something completely different, and we invested ourselves in Edgar Allan Poe, the father of American horror and the mystery, or the detective story. And we made a vow pretty early on in the making of that show that we were not going to invest the storyline of Edgar Allan in the obsession with dying women, which is present in so much of Poe's work. And so, but when you don't address something, that's when when we wanted to make something after Edgar Allan, the dying woman is the beautiful corpse is a persistent symbol in society. And we wanted to make something firmly in the 20th century, but everything we had made prior to that had been in the 19th century. And so we were researching a lot of different things. We talked about Slender Man for a while, kind of the things that are like terrifying us now,
We'll still do Slender Man at some point. Slender Man's not off the table yet.
I'll keep my eye out for that one, definitely.
We already have it cast.
You've heard of Slender Man, but have you heard of Slender Woman?
Yes. And usually we are introduced to her when she is face up in a beautiful, reflective pool of blood. And so this is a persistent fear in our society. And I would say that the story that stuck with us the most, that we found on the internet, the thing that really troubled us. It
should be said that we also, after creating Legend of White Woman Creek and Edgar Allan, we were in a situation where we were like, okay, we've done 2 horror shows. The first one's really sad and really tragic and kind of creepy at times. Is it really horror? We're like, no, it's not really. It's not quite horror. It's in the genre, but it's like a multi-pronged thing. We got Edgar Allan. It's really funny. It's really cute. There's like some pathos to it. Is it scary? No, it's not scary. Like, it's horror, but it's not scary. So we were actively searching for material that really disturbed us.
Yes.
That really
Yeah.
was like, let's lean into, okay, we're saying that we're horror theater practitioners. Let's swing for the fences and do something that
Totally.
maybe our parents won't enjoy.
Yeah.
So
Totally.
that was kind of, we were actively in that search when Katie
Yes.
discovered. I'll let you take the rest of that.
And so something that always bothered me as a kid was that I had found out about a male necrophile while on vacation on a ghost story tour.
Oh,
You know, those ghost story walking tours?
yeah.
You're in a beautiful place, you're with your family, and you're hearing about
Key West.
and and you're hearing about rape and murder and terrible things, and it is titillating. And this was
For some reason, when it's in the context of a ghost story, it's perfectly acceptable for a 9-year-old there of like, oh yeah.
Right.
And I think ghost stories are so interesting because they're indicative of what is happening in our brains. Like, what are these weirdo stories that we are carrying forward with us and telling our children? And this was something that freaked me out as a kid. And I was like, well, that freaks me out enough as a woman hearing about a man taking possession of your body and you have no control. And I mean, then you get, it's disgusting.
Yes.
It's terrifying because so often women and the vulnerable are taken advantage of. And I wanted to turn the tables. And so when we read about this woman who's like a very rare case, because most necrophiles are men.
Exactly.
Delightful.
Actually,
It disturbed us. It read the source material, and I am gonna blank on the journalist's name, but if you Google it, you can find the Unrepentant Necrophile, and it's an interview with Karen Greenlee, and it reads like a crime scene procedural to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's fine. I don't remember what I was going to interject, but I will say, so once we found the interview, the time period of the event that happened was 1978 Sacramento. So with the basis of, okay, we're firmly in 78. It's about stealing the source material is because this woman did, she stole a body and took it on a road trip and was caught 3 days later, and then got charged in California for stealing a hearse and
interfering with a funeral.
Because necrophilia was not a law in the books at that point.
Oh my gosh.
California.
Wow.
It was only
the 70s.
In like 15 states. So
just from the time period, the time period really pushed us into the punk genre. And once we made that decision, we're like, okay, I can kind of play bass. You can play acoustic guitar. You can play acoustic guitar, so you probably can play electric guitar, I would imagine.
I borrowed an electric guitar from someone that I knew had one.
And then we set about looking for a drummer who was ages 18, who was male, ages 18 to 45, was a drummer, dancer, actor, basically.
Dancer, mover.
We cast a wide net and found Nate eventually.
Yes.
We found Nate a month before we had to do the show. So.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Well, that sort of ties me into a question I have here from Ricky and Dana, and they want to know how the drums became, because the drums are so integral to this show, and they especially are like all about, the sex in this show, if you can call it sex. So Ricky and Dana want to know how the drums became that metaphor.
So when we create theater, we do a devising process where so oftentimes we'll create shows kind of backwards to the traditional model. We do the staging first, or it's more that we're building the staging and the writing at the same time. Essentially, the staging is going to affect the writing, the writing is going to affect the staging.
Cool.
And because of that process, you got to be in the room together. you like got to work very diligently, and really you can only be making progress when everybody's in the room together. So because of that, we tend to like have short creation processes the first time, because it gets really stressful otherwise. If you know, like if you have a 6-week project where you're constantly doing 12 hours a day, it gets tiring. So this one, we had a relatively short creation process for us. Like as we've like done more work, the creation processes seem to get shorter and then spread out. Like we'll do 3 weeks and then let it sit, and then we'll do another 2 weeks and let it sit. And so this initial
we weren't strategic about only 3 weeks.
But it worked. So
well, you give yourself a deadline. You're like, we got 3 weeks to create 45 minutes. Like you give yourself the parameters. So we knew Nate was a drummer, but because of the nature, we had been on tour before we created the show in Minneapolis, so we weren't even in the same spot. So we had met Nate briefly before we cast him, but we had never seen him perform, had never heard him drum, really had only talked to him for like 5 minutes. We had, believe it or not, there was not a tremendous amount of interest in this show among the dance drummer actor community in Minneapolis that we were looking for. So when Nate was signing out, we're like, okay, good. This guy sounds like he's interested for some reason. Let's do it. So the first day he showed up, and we were like, okay, set up your drums. Show us what you got. And he just set up his drums and just started playing. And we're like, okay,
great.
We're gonna build. We got 18 days to do the show. We're gonna build it all around that, because that is
very
more impressive than anything we can do. We can. I had only been back at bass for about 2 weeks at that point.
Wow.
It was like the first day that we played together, it was like, oh no, music is way harder than we remember.
I think we got into the space for the first time on a Tuesday, and then we found the table at like a resale industrial thing, like 4 days later, and then we crammed it into the back of our Volkswagen Beetle.
Oh my gosh!
Across town, and then we were like, we got a show, and then because that table, I mean, like
it's everything.
Yes, we love this show because we just put everything together, and then we took it apart, and we tried it in all these different configurations while we were like, okay, well, what is she singing right now? And we're like we're writing out lyrics and jamming together, and basically on like a whiteboard, and then we'd like send everybody home and be like, okay, we've hit a stopping point. Like we got to walk away from this. And then Nick and I would be like, okay,
we've made it to the gas station. We've made it to the gas station. What happens after the gas station?
That is very cool.
And because of that process, like it ends up being where we now that we've been doing the show for 4 years now, the staging kind of doesn't really get complete until after the first or second production. And then after that, once you've got the machine in your body and you're like, I know where my hand is supposed to go at every time I lift this, it's got to go over here. You've got all that in your body. Then you go around and actually like start working on like acting beats and that sort of thing. So I don't know if much of the Cincinnati audience who saw the show in 2016 has now seen the video, but I've improved tremendously as an actor in the last I'm not great or anything, but I was shitty the first time I was around in Cincinnati, and I feel like it's become okay now. And it's only because it takes you gotta worry about everything else before you can even start.
Yeah, especially working in such tight time frame.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's so cool how Nate came on as the drummer and the whole thing was built around it, partway through the process. I remember when I was watching this video for the first time, the first time you see a corpse like lying down and playing the drums, I was like, that is the most punk rock thing I've ever seen in my life. Like that is so sick. So I love that it was so spontaneous. We're
realizing there's not a lot of he is unique in that he's probably not the only drummer in the country that's playing on his back, but we have not been able to find another one. Like The closest we've found was a YouTube video by Dave King of the Bad Plus.
He's standing up. He's not laying
well,
down.
and he's just talking about like, why can't somebody figure out how to play drums standing up? And we're like, oh, we'll do you that. We'll do one better.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's great. So we have 5 minutes left. So I would love to know just a little bit about. So Randy wants to know, from our audience, wants to know how you guys are doing in the plague. And you know, what material you're finding amidst the pandemic.
Ooh.
We are doing good. We both are government subsidized artists now.
Yeah. We do have the good grace of New York State, even though the unemployment system was really backed up initially, like everyone's getting through. It's not a situation like our friends in Florida who they're like, yeah, you can have unemployment, you're just never ever gonna get through this system. And so we feel we feel
safe and taken care of, and aware that we are extremely privileged. And that even though we find that as willfully impoverished traveling artists living in New York, that we there are so many people that do not necessarily qualify and are doing much worse. And that is why it is so important that we take care of each other. And
Katie's been doing a lot of volunteer work, and I've been assisting with that volunteer work, but which has been just kind of, the main.
We take shifts on what we're able to do, and we're people of service. And
and the main thing is just like, it's like many of you, and like I would say most of you, it's just the isolation of quarantine is
it's an endurance. It's an endurance test.
Yeah.
And we're greatly disturbed basically by what is happening right now. We made Necrophile 5 blocks from 38th and Chicago and Minneapolis, and our hearts are there, and our hearts are, it's a confusing time to not feel like you can, like the best thing you can do is not go protest, which is also something that's a position of privilege. But we're hoping that it's also protecting the 38 other people that live in our apartment building.
Yeah, we're finding ourselves in a situation where it's like there's so many confluence of things, of like, what is it? Is it the pandemic? Is it the protests? And it's been a difficult weekend for me, just because I'm from Minneapolis. I grew up in South Minneapolis, like 4 blocks from the Cup Foods. So it's like very integral to my formative years of 2 through 10. Like I was like just around there. So it's been a nice process of reconnecting with people back in Minneapolis and in South Minneapolis. And I mean, everything seems in tumult from every direction right now, and New York is not spared from that. And
neither is Cincinnati.
And
absolutely.
It's
time to feel disturbed and uncomfortable, my friends. It's time to take action for the most vulnerable.
Yes.
Absolutely.
100%.
Great. Wow. Well, thank you both so much for sharing that specifically. And obviously you have a really close tie to what's going on right now, having met in the epicenter of everything that's going on. So thank you for, your vulnerability and sharing that. We have to wrap up now. So I want to say thank you to everyone who watched. Thank you for your questions.
Yes. Thank you for watching, everyone. And please spread the word. Kate, I'm so sorry to interrupt you. Please help us spread the word. This was going to be a North American tour this summer, and we're unable to hit the road, but we're calling Cincy Fringe our 2020 world tour, because this film is premiering at Cincy Fringe, and you can share it with anyone literally anywhere. So
yes,
that is a great way to be able to support us and what we're doing. Yeah.
Yes, so please share the Unrepentant Necrophile. Make sure everyone's getting their tickets on cincyfringe.com. Keep marching for what you care for, and I guess keep letting yourself be uncomfortable and then taking
Yes.
action to support that.
Yes.
So thank you all so much. That's all from us. And if you're watching Talkbacks, I will see you again tomorrow at 8 p.m. for The Bassoonist.
Happy
Thanks,
Cincy
everyone.
Fringe. Everybody watch Peter Michael Marino at 7.
Thank you so much. R.I.P. George Floyd.